Mr. Levy, I'll start the next question with you, if I may. This question concerns the constitutionality of a federal law, which requires hospitals which offer surgical services and which receive federal funds, whether directly or by reimbursement, to provide first trimester abortions to women who request them. In companion cases, the law has been challenged on religious grounds by two plaintiffs. One, a Muslim clinic which employs only male doctors and treats only male patients, and the other case was brought by a Catholic hospital which declines to perform abortions under any circumstances.
There's really several parts to that. First of all, we have a question of whether that's an unconstitutional condition. Sometimes that which you cannot prohibit directly, you can make conditional on the receipt of federal funds. And that's a tricky area because, after all, if there are no limits on that, what's to stop the government from taking 90% of your income and saying, we'll only give it back to you if you behave the way we want? So, you know, that's a tricky area, and I don't know that there's a clear line there. But probably in this case, again, if we just look at current doctrine, probably we don't have to worry about it being an unconstitutional condition, given that abortion is, at least under current law, recognized as a right. So then there's the question of other exceptions to that. Can they require that a hospital, in effect, not be able to enforce its only male rule? Clearly they can. I mean, Title VII and other laws prohibiting discrimination by private actors have been upheld, and I really wouldn't see any problem there. The religious aspect is different. That there is a First Amendment right to religious liberty. Can you? So you really have two constitutional rights. Well, I don't know that you do. I was going to say you have two constitutional rights bumping up against each other, but there's a constitutional right to abortion, which would be different than saying that there's a constitutional right, that the hospital has a constitutional requirement to perform that procedure, and yet at the same time it does have First Amendment rights not to. So I think my ideal justice in that case would rule that you cannot require the religious hospital to do that if it violates part of its religious tenets.
Professor Roosevelt, same question.
Justice Holmes, faced with a question like this about whether a policeman could be fired for talking about politics, once said, "A man may have a constitutional right to talk politics, but he has no constitutional right to be a policeman." Now, the unconstitutional conditions doctrine has moved beyond that, but to a large extent, I think the state of the law still is that he who pays the piper calls the tune. So the question that we would have to ask, I think, is not so much if the federal government is giving this money, can it attach strings? The answer to that is yes. If the federal government is giving funds to these hospitals, it can say, if you accept these funds, you must use them to serve female patients and provide first trimester abortions. As a general matter, it can say that. Now, obviously, that looks as though it burdens some people's religious beliefs, but the answer is going to be, well, you certainly have a constitutional right to follow your religious beliefs, but you don't have a constitutional right to do so with federal money. So the question that we have to ask is, in the circumstances of this case, is the federal money something that is provided to everyone so that it's a sort of general baseline entitlement, so that taking it away would actually be best understood as penalizing these hospitals? Or is it something that's really a benefit? Is it something that's not a baseline entitlement? Is it something that the hospitals can function without? And that is the pragmatic line of inquiry that my justice would take. My justice would look at the facts again, try to decide narrowly, try to decide whether the federal funding in this case is best understood as something that is provided to everyone and is really necessary for hospitals to function, or is it something that hospitals can do without, that's an extra benefit but not something they require.
Thank you.